Hi, I'm Euge Valovirta, and this one is about the plugins that I use pretty much on every mix with guitars and bass. Let's listen to a song first and I'll show you on the screen what's happening, what's going on there, and after that I'll break it down for you. Before we move on, a few words about the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. What is a Skillshare? It's an online learning community with thousands of courses, everything from mixing, recording, color grading, film editing, growing plants, you name it. I have learned a lot from Skillshare, especially about editing films and using Final Cut. Because I started this YouTube channel roughly 2 years ago. I didn't have any idea how to shoot anything, how to edit, how to use video editing softwares and stuff. So I learned a lot from here, and especially this course by Miles Fernley, who is a BBC published videographer. This is a color grading from beginner to advanced in Final Cut Pro. So I've learned a lot about color grading from this video, because when I shoot these videos, I shoot them in log profile, so they look like this. And after I color grade them, they look like this. So quite a big of a difference, and completely starting from scratch. Like I said, I had no idea. This is really good course, and there's also courses if you're just starting in Final Cut or any editing software, you have no idea. It's a great way to learn. There's no ads, nothing. And with the link in the description, you will get a 1 month for free if you want to check this out. I strongly recommend this, because it's, like I said, pretty much everything I know about using Final Cut I have learned from here and color grading and so on. So, strong recommendation, check that out. Alright, then let's move to guitar playing. Shortly about the gear. ESP custom shop, my signature model, EMG5766 pickups. Then into my pedal board, where I have now Bass SD1 on. Then into KG amp switcher, and from there it goes to Marshall J800, the bad boy from 1984. From there to Sandrock React IR, reactive load, where I have my signature IR Valovirta from Jens Bugre. Then it goes to the audio interface, which is a Steinberg UR816C, and then into Cubase. Sounds like this. Pretty good, right. So on the song, you saw the stuff I use pretty much on every mix. So the first is EQ. It's solid state Logic SL4000. Well, it's a channel strip. It's a part of the Softube's Console 1 system. So you can only get this if you have the Console 1. You can download other channel strips here too, like British Class A, which is an Eve, and American Class A, which is API. Those you can actually use separately, buy them separately. But this comes only here. And as you can see, I don't have much EQ now, because the way I record, I dial the sound that it's like good to go. And if needed, then I maybe do small tweaks in the EQ. But usually, if I need to do too much, then I just dial it again and record it again. So that's the EQ I use, pretty much only. It's great simple EQ. Maybe some low cut. As you saw on the mix, I think I had the low cut around 80, but now, you know, I'm not using this, I'm just playing now. And then the compressor I use on that the song, it was on the leads, so it's a SSL compressor. It's very subtle, but many times I put that on lead guitars just to kind of even it out and make it, you know, better fit in the mix. So that's the compressor I pretty much use. Sometimes, as you saw on the song, let's change the compressor. I use this Empirical Labs Mic E compressor. And I don't really use it for compressing, because I had it set pretty much like 2:1 ratio, longest attack, shortest release, and threshold is 0. So it's not really doing compression, but check it out what happens. This is based on a, you know, distressor. So it has the sound, the device itself. So sometimes I use that if I feel that, man, the guitars could be a little bit, but it's not the volume or not the EQ thing, it's just to give them something. Then I usually use this. So you can download it here, and the plugin, if you don't have the console, it looks like this, which I have on bass. So this is basically a Empirical Labs distressor. Okay, so that was the EQ compressors, usually those two. Sometimes I use, actually on clean guitars, let me show it to you here, Dynamics, I use the Summit Audio TLA. This is really smooth, kind of like LA2A, and I like this on clean guitars usually. Then here on my aux sends, I have 3 effects: Dimension D, Eventide Harmonizer, and Room. So let's open the Dimension D. They are here on the effect channels. It's made by Arturia. It's a classic Roland Dimension D. It's basic setting, it's always like this. Number 2 in. That's it. Or do I have the 4? No, just number 2 in. This is pretty much always on bass and a little bit on rhythm guitars. So check out what happens when I engage it. I use this pretty much just to widen the guitars, and it kind of lives on my rhythm guitar bass, like on the song. So when the guitars come in, then when there's blended in the dimension D, suddenly they're a little bit wider. It gives them kind of more lively wide, but it's very little, so you don't like hear it, but you hear it when it's off, or at least I hear it. The other thing is eventide. That widens it up too, so I think of this dimension D and the eventide kind of like choruses, but eventide is kind of like just static chorus. So it's this one. It's pretty much always on lead guitars, if there's one lead guitar, not harmonized. So that just again makes it kind of wider, and so that it's not poking directly from the center, so that it's blends in nicely into the mix. And sometimes this is on rhythm guitars as well. It's great. And then what I usually have, like on this song, a little bit of room reverb. As you can see here, I have dialed in just a tiny amount. So let me show you what that does. Just by adding it a little bit to the rhythm guitar, it kind of makes them sit a little bit better. But if I want the rhythm guitars to be really in your face, then I don't use it. But usually there's pretty much always a tiny amount. But it's little things. And it's a Soft Tube's TAR1 reverb. This is really good. Sometimes I use CLA's Epic, but I'll show you that soon. But this pretty much lives. These three lives here on the three effects I use the most, so that's why they are here, so I can just blend them in. Then other stuff, delays. I have pretty much two delays I use. Let's take the room off, because this has a little bit room. This is a Waves CLA Epic. It's pretty much, or not pretty much, it is 4 different delays: tape, throw, slap, crowd, 4 different reverbs: plate, room, hall, and space. And what is cool is because this pretty much mimics the Chris Lord-Alge's signal path at his studio, so you can send delays to reverbs and you can do all kinds of stuff with this. This stereo march preset, this is pretty much CLA's stereo march preset that comes with this. I just tweaked it a little bit, so it sounds like this. It's a little bit different delay on the sides, that's why the title is stereo march. The other thing that I use a lot on leads is Soft Tube's Timecodes. It's a little bit kind of like, stereo march type, but it's a little bit dirtier because it's a, tape delay emulation. Really cool. So these are the 2 delays I use. Then the other effect I use a lot is a Symphonic 90. This is a overloads emulation of a Yamaha SPX 90, the Symphonic preset. Check out. You know, it's exactly why normal chairs, no rest for the wicked. This was added in the mix on those albums. You hear it, there's a lot of this. So this is really cool. And the THU is you know, it's actually, it's a little bit like Softube's amp room, which we'll get into soon. And I have there a couple of, I haven't really used the amps because I use real amps. But there's a few, like my own presets, like CYHRA 1987. And this delay and the reverb are actually pretty good too. So this one I used. Didn't use it on this mix, but it's on many mixes. On my solo album, the latest solo album, Shooting from the Hip, this was pretty much the lead guitar sound, because I didn't have the Eventide then. So now I've been having a real amp. Sometimes I use plugins on the albums, like all the solos, melodies on CYHRA's 2 albums, Letters to Myself and No Hell is in Hell. That was amp room, and STL Tone's Howard Benson plugin. I just seem to work in a mix using plugins instead of real amps. The rhythm guitars are played with real amps. What I have here, let me bypass all the SD here, so it sounds like this. Let's say it's real amp. SD on. Back to plugin. So these Softube's Marshalls are they're the closest to Marshall, because they have a lot of different Marshalls here, and I played with all of these, like the real ones, not Murder One, and I have 3800s and I've had JMPs, and I played with the Kerry King. These are so close that it's, and the feel is also great work. So this is my go-to pretty much if I use a plugins, amp room. It's great. But then I also have what I've been using, what I actually used on a few songs on No Hell is in Hell for leads. It's STL Tone's Howard Benson, the Marshall Plexi. This is an emulation of Howard's own modded Marshall Plexi. So now I have there the preset. This is the actual preset I used on the CYHRA's album. This is Tube Screamer, delay, and then cab. You can load third-party IRs. My signature IR wasn't available when we recorded. I don't remember what IR I used. I think I used just several IR that comes with this, because well, I have loaded a lot of Ulgren IRs, but these are pretty good also. And then for bass, so I record usually 3 tracks. 2 of them are from the Sansamp, Jerry Lee, and then one is DI using a Radial J48. So the first is the Sansamp D, which is a clean Ampex style. And then this kind of Arturias is a tube-sta emulation of a classic old tube compressor. It just makes the bass a little bit more even. And then the other thing I pretty much have always on the low bass track, the clean deep, is a Waves Renaissance bass. Just a little bit of that low end thump in there. On the drive, which is these sound horrible on their own. The mic key compressor, and I don't know if you noticed, but I have the drive always on 5 on every channel. Then when it's on 5, it emulates the classic sound of SSL console, and then you can drive it harder, or if you want cleaner, you can do it. But when it's on 5 and the character on 0, then it emulates the character of a classic SSL 4000E console. So I have that always on 5. On every channel except the bus channels, because then it will be kind of double and it's a bit too much. Then the third channel, what I use on bass is just a clank. So this acts also as a little bit like a booster, the mic. Like I said, it has a unique tone and sound. And when I use plugins, I use them before the console. So I treat them kind of like real amps. First it's the amp, so I think of this as a real amp. Then it hits the console, like you would record like I use with real amps. And then there's EQ if needed. On this one, there is no EQ. So those were the plugins that I use pretty much on every mix. There's not a lot of them, couple of delays, couple of reverbs, SSL EQ, a few compressors. But when the playing is good, when the sound is good, the tone is good from the get-go, you don't have to do much. Hopefully you found this interesting and informative. Until next time, take care, all the best, bye.